out of the way. But before we get some logistical stuff out of the way, I want you guys to look at what's on the screen. We'll come back to our actual notes. This actually isn't from the book itself. This is a little game that a lot of math teachers tend to use called Which One Does Not Belong. I'm just curious. Have any of you guys been looking at this when you open the PDF? Have any of you been looking at it since it's been on the screen? Which one do you think doesn't belong? Unmute, or you can put it in the chat and Emma will shout it out to us. Who has one and an argument why? Not even an argument, that sounds too intense. A reason why. If you want me to, I can go ahead and use my nifty new board to even number them if that would make it easier. That could be 1, that could be 2, that could be 3, that could be 4. Which one does not belong? Go for it, Claudine.
No, never mind. I might have changed my answer.
Oh, what was the first one that you thought, though? Maybe this is the point of the assignment.
I was thinking 4 because
how come?
It's negative in the beginning.
Okay. Do you guys agree that 4 has a negative as the leading coefficient, good vocab, and the rest don't?
But now I think number 3 because it's a trinomial. So.
Or at least it's written as a trinomial, the ax squared plus bx plus c. I guess number 4 could be written that way, but it's not. So far we have an argument for number 4. There's a negative leading coefficient. We have an argument for 3. Give her a thumbs up if you agree. 3 is the only one that's written as a standard trinomial. No thumbs up? You guys all disagree with Claudine? Poor kid. I agree with her. Let's try again. Do you guys agree with number 3? Being written differently than the rest. Emma says yes. Josh says yes. Jasmine, thank you. Ooh, Isaac and Peter they're pondering. So that's weird. I wonder if there's more than one answer. Does anybody have any reasons as to why 1 or 2 might not belong? Nobody sees anything? You can throw it in the chat if you don't want to say it out loud. I'm going to the next screen. We have people looking at it. Which one does not belong? It's a very open-ended question. All right, you guys just had your microphones on in your breakout rooms. If you want to turn them off, you most definitely can. But each room was supposed to have one spokesperson. So I'm not even going to stress you out by calling your name because you guys chose your own spokesperson. I'm just wondering who your spokesperson was. And I'm just going to randomly pick 2 groups. So we might figure it out before... Ooh, this won't let me move it. That's awkward. There we go. There are too many things. Oh, the breakout rooms. Are anybody... Oh, Ian's still in his breakout room. Come on, Ian, come back. Who else is still in there? Just Ian. Well, I guess he's staying for the whole time. There we go. Now we got it. All right, so breakout room number 1. You guys should be able to see it on my screen. Let me go ahead and make it so just... Oh. You know what? I'm just going to close it. Let me, because I don't know what the different breakout rooms are. Let me take a picture of it real fast. P.S. This might be a great thing. I use it in my classes sometimes. And I'm just saying that, guys, because I'm having to go through Zoom classes. I did it this summer. I'm doing it this fall. So I know some of the struggle. I'm not even pretending to totally understand the struggle that you're facing with everything being online. But anyway, it's a nice thing to have your camera close. Just take a quick picture of the screen if ever anyone's going too fast and you want to grab it real fast, especially before breakout rooms too. But breakout room number 3, Brian, Ian, Josh, Paul, whoever your spokesperson is, do you have a reason why 1 or 2 does not belong?
You said that it's number 1 because you get divided by 2, or like Josh, I don't know.
Oh, either way.
I think it's number 3 because it has a 0 at the end for some reason.
Okay, so he picked out another reason. Yeah, so it has equal to 0 and none of the other ones do. That's another way of looking at it. That's kind of the same thing as the standard trinomial, but good, Brian, you're right. Equal 0 is over there. And then anybody throw it in the chat. What is it called in number 1? What were they talking about that 2 could come out of it all? Do you remember what that's called? When any sort of polynomial has something shared that can be divided out. There's a snazzy name for it, or 3 letters. Okay, factoring is what you're doing, Kenya. That's good. But what's it called?
Greatest common factor?
Got it. Tara, good job. So the greatest common factor, 1 is the only one with a GCF that can be pulled out. Once you move the 2 to the other side by, wait a minute, Brian, help me out real fast. I know that 1 and 2 and 4 don't have an equal 0, but what would we need to do to get them equal to 0? Could we make them look like number 3? And if so, what would we do to get that? Oh, he like blocked out. Can anybody else help him out? Help him out? Oh, there he is. What can we do, Brian? Say lifeline if you're stuck.
Like dividing, like.
Dividing is what a lot of people would think. Yeah, dividing is what a lot of people would think. But here's the struggle. What if we divided by 2? What's 2 over 2?
It's 1.
Yeah, not 0. Bummer, man. All right, well, how can we get that equal to 0 then?
Minus.
Paul, yeah, help him out.
Minus.
Just minus. So even though a lot of people think division, we could get all of these equal to 0. But remember, I mean, basic algebra, right? Going back to algebra 1, what you do to one side, you do to the other. So we could get it equal to 0. We could get this one equal to 0 by adding 9 on both sides. We could get this one equal to 0 by subtracting 6 from both sides. I didn't show the full thing, but anyway. So we have a defense for 1 has a GCF. The rest don't. A defense for 3, 2 different defenses for 3. Brian's, and I think Claudine, were you the one that said equal to 0? And then a defense for 4, because it's the only one with a negative leading coefficient. Oh my goodness, we still don't have one for 2. So breakout room number 1, we had Noah, Isaac, Emma, Claudine. Who's the spokesperson?
I am.
Emma, did you guys figure out any way that 2 did not belong?
We were looking at it and we noticed that like the 9 is negative and all of the other answers are positive or 0, but
Yeah.
then again, like that could be easily fixed by adding 9 to both sides and
then it would be okay. But either way, no, you're right. Like just by looking at it, yeah. Just by looking at it, the term on the right-hand side is negative, whereas the rest are not. Here's the long story short. Thanks, Emma, and all of breakout room number 1. Here's the main idea of this game whenever we see it. Which one does not belong? There's no wrong answer. I mean, there is. If you said number 3 doesn't belong because there's an elephant, I mean, there's not an elephant in number 3. By the way, great Disney documentary on elephants. But coming back, Disney nature, it's fun. But number 3, you can't say there's an elephant because there's not. So to some extent, I can't say there's no wrong answer, but there are multiple right answers. That's something just kind of as you guys get ready to start pre-calculus. These are just basic quadratic equations. Brian, you were right. 3 would probably be the easiest one to solve because it's already equal to 0, except if some of you guys have started looking at number 3, that factoring would be disgusting. Anyway, quadratic formula or complete the square, anybody? It's okay. You're groaning over there. I already know it. But anyway, even though number 3 would actually be hard to solve, it looks nicer than the rest. But there are multiple reasons as to why different boxes don't belong. So just kind of to take some of the pressure off, a lot of you at the very beginning, it took a long time for anyone to say anything. You're just looking at if I ever throw one of these up and be like, oh, hey, that one because, and there's no wrong answer. In the sense of, does it make it distinct from the rest? And the answer is very possible yes. And in pre-calculus, and even more so in calculus, the answers aren't quite as straightforward as they used to be. Kind of like life is messier than we would like it to be. Math has been one thing for most of you up until here, getting to pre-calculus has been one thing that at least has like, okay, there's a question, there's a problem, and there's one answer. Okay, maybe two answers if you're factoring. But there's a clear answer, and there it is. That's it. There's only one way to write it, and you're done. This year, there are going to be a few different times that you realize, even though there is truth behind, and pretty clear, pretty concrete truth behind the different math concepts that we're talking about, there can be some ambiguity. There can be some, there's one that's actually called the ambiguous case, has to do with triangles. We're not going back to geometry, but triangles are definitely an important thing in pre-calculus with trigonometry. There are going to be beginnings of problems and endings of problems that you guys go very different routes to get there with t-proofs and trigonometric identities. Anyway, there's all sorts of stuff coming that's going to be interesting. And this section, section 1.1, is going to be an interesting section in that it's going to be actually pretty easy stuff. The homework's actually pretty short and sweet and to the point. There aren't that many slides to it. Literally, there's 1 and 2 and 3, and we're done. That's why we're going to be able to finish that today. But let me just go over a few logistics really fast. Our group activities took a little bit longer than I wanted, but I want to make sure you guys at least understand how to access everything. There was a question in your breakout rooms at the very beginning, and you guys just type it in the chat if you want, unless you're comfortable unmiking, or I should say unmuting. I'm curious, did anybody figure out where I want you taking notes this year?
Whiteboard?
Whiteboard. I actually did put that in the syllabus, that it would be a great thing, because I don't know about you, but if I make a mistake, it's so much easier to go whoosh on a whiteboard than like to erase it or to mark it out with a pen. So for examples, Brian, was that you? I think it's awesome to use a whiteboard. But for notes, as far as like getting down what we do in class to have ready for the quizzes and tests that are online, at least for right now, because I'm going to make them pretty much open note to have as resources, and to have in future years, because math just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds, and especially in pre-calculus, it's kind of pre-everything future math science route, maybe not business math. We do a little bit of that, but more the math science route. But there is something that, like, as far as you guys keeping a record, writing down a record, keeping it for the future, where do I want you to be taking the, like, official notes?
Composition book.
Got it. So quick transition, quick segue to some logistics, all right? This is when you guys basically ask me any questions about anything that you found right here on this page. If you have been to this page, I think I put a link to it. Have I not? Oh, I haven't put a link to it yet today. I'm sorry. Let me put a link to it really fast today, just in case some of you did not come on Monday. You did not access it. It is in RenWeb underneath resources, I believe. You won't necessarily have many reasons to come to my website this year, in the sense that most everything will be Google Classroom or linked from Google Classroom, like WebAssign is linked from Google Classroom, etc. But this is a page that it was kind of like whether or not you had a Heritage Warriors email, you could go here and you could access stuff. So you have your Google Classroom code. Hopefully you guys have already all joined into that. You have your WebAssign class code. Now, help me out really fast, and I'm going to go and make it so I can see more of you. There we go. Give me a quick thumbs up, and do both to make it super obvious if you only needed this code to be able to get into my class in WebAssign. Like, just to get in, you only needed this code. Give me 2 thumbs up real fast. Okay. I'm seeing a few of you guys that are backing me up on that. You only need this code to get into WebAssign. Now, you do need to get to these directions or go watch the video tutorial if you have not yet, and I'm going to show you why in just a second, and what's on WebAssign that showed up this morning if you haven't seen it yet, because that's where we're going to be doing our homework. But with WebAssign, really fast, this only gets you a temporary access. So once you got in, it's going to say something like, and this is for anyone who didn't come on Monday or who didn't understand that paper I made you take a picture of. Once you get into WebAssign using this class code, it gives you only a free trial. So if you watch the video, I actually show you exactly what happens with the free trial and how you need to click on purchase code, but please don't pay any money. I'm not trying to make it hard on you or your parents. we as a school have bought you access codes. These are college textbooks. This is a college class, basically. So we have purchase codes for you. So anyone who didn't come to school on Monday and who didn't get a white paper from me, these ones, they're not all the same. They're all different, and they have unique codes at the bottom that you need to put in to get the full access to WebAssign for more than, does anybody remember how many days? Was it like 13 days? Something like that. You can have access for a little bit of time, but not for a long time. So please, 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 you do need that special code, and it's totally fine if you didn't come on Monday. I just need to be able to give you that full access code. So we're going to look at WebAssign in just 1 second. That's where you're going to find homework. And then here's the class schedule if you guys don't already have it somewhere else. And here's all my Zoom links. So in this syllabus, we'll talk more about the syllabus a little bit more on Thursday. But is there anyone out there that's read it and you're confused by something in it? I don't have everything changed as far as virtual learning. I might it's a living document, which means I can kind of change it whenever I want it. It's just a link to my document. So I'll let you guys know if I make any changes. There are some things with virtual that might be a little bit different. Like Math Lab, I had to change that there was remote Math Lab versus in-person Math Lab. But real fast, if you guys want, I'm just going to like count down from 5. And if I don't hear from you, then I'll move on. But does anybody have any questions from reading the syllabus as far as right away, right now? Okay. So then I'm just going to go ahead and point you guys to, and I think I can just zoom in. No, I can't. I can go here. I just want to show you guys the things that I want you to have for this class, because that's kind of the most important thing for right now. And it's right here at the very top. So if you guys go to that link I gave you, if you go to the syllabus, you can actually pull it up on your own computer and then see it a little more detailed. But basically, I mean, what do you want in a math class? Pencils, erasers, why colored? Because sometimes we're going to be doing multiple graphs, and there are going to be times for corrections on things, especially quizzes and tests, where you take it, you try it, you get something wrong, and I want you to correct it in a colored pen in order to kind of make a connection in your brain as far as that's what I tried. It was incorrect. Just a color makes a huge difference. And sometimes there will be assignments where you get points from doing those corrections, maybe not alone, maybe coming to a math lab, maybe working with, I know some of you guys already know each other, but in breakout rooms, hopefully get to know even more people and you guys can like exchange numbers, etc. That's another thing for breakout rooms. If you guys want to be like, hey, you guys want a study group later and we can study for the test or whatnot. It's a lot easier to do when you're on campus. It's a lot harder when you're virtual. So be thinking that you guys can be making connections in those breakout rooms as far as kind of planning to work together in a way that maintains your integrity. But this is, Brian, great job, where I also said I think it would be great to have an individual whiteboard expo marker just for, really guys, teachers, we love writing on whiteboards because we make a mistake and we're like, okay, it's all better. You guys might really enjoy that too as you're doing just practice problems in class, especially if they're difficult, long ones, and you make one mistake and then like, all of it's bad, just you can erase it real fast and then move on. Graphing calculator, you guys should know. You guys have already showed me you have your webcam and your microphone. Sorry about that whole muting, unmuting. I thought I had done it right, but I messed you guys up. And then for your first homework, you guys are going to need to practice using a phone or a scanner, basically for making a PDF, but I have a great tutorial video that's on that Google Classroom assignment we'll look at soon. And then there's that composition book that I want you guys to use for notes. You don't necessarily have to write down everything from class, but you do need to write down the main things from every section. And I am going to kind of be picky about you guys organizing because I want this to be a resource. Well, number one, that's helpful for your test, that you can kind of like look to the table of contents and be like, exponential functions. Okay, wait a minute. How do I do? Or logarithmic properties. Okay, let me turn to that page and I can find the formulas that I need. Open note tests or open book tests. They're usually the hardest because you waste so much time trying to find the perfect spot in your notes to try the problem instead of just trying the problem with what you know. So hopefully my table of contents will help you for that, but then also help you for things like studying for the final later. When you're doing like the final review, you can look to the table of contents and jump to a particular topic, etc. Or if you're in a college class one day, or if you're in calculus next year and I bring up trigonometry and you're like, I have to go review that. You can pull out your notes, turn to the page, and review where trigonometry is. So I'll be a little picky about that. Spiral notebook, this is what I want you guys to be using for all of your homework assignments. I mean, even if you were here in class, I wouldn't have you tearing out and turning in separate pieces of paper. I would have you doing it all in the homework spiral and just attaching pictures online. And then I would collect the homework spirals every chapter and kind of see that you were able to not just attempt homework, but then polish it up, meaning the things you got stuck on, you asked in class, the ones you got wrong, you figured out how to do right with math labs or with class time, etc. So that's kind of a whether or not we were distance learning. And this can also be the place where you keep track and where you take your quizzes and tests. Yeah, you can do that on a whiteboard, but I can't give you partial credit if I can't see your work. And so spirals will also be homework spirals, what I call it, where you guys will be doing work. And then some of you guys have textbooks. Some of you don't. For those of you that have textbooks, take good care of them. And you get to escape the screen from time to time to go do your math homework. But for those of you that don't, let me quickly enable the waiting room real fast. Before we do our notes on section 1.1, I know everything is happening kind of quick today, and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but there's just a lot of logistics. Let's go talk about WebAssign. And the best way to talk about WebAssign is probably for us to go to Google Classroom. So coming back to Google Classroom, here we go. Okay, in Google Classroom, I need to make this so I can adjust it. There we go. You guys saw a homework assignment that should have popped up today, and it's the one for section 1.1. This is your first homework assignment, so I wanted you to know, like, hey, you should be doing your homework in a homework spiral. It doesn't have to be a big one. It can be one of those cheap little ones. Actually, it's probably safer if it is, because then you can not tear it up before you finish it. Those things fall apart so easy. But real fast, top of your classwork tab, you guys do have the resources like my website, like the Zoom links, like WebAssign, like the shared folder where I'm going to be uploading whatever notes we do take from the day. So the PDF, but with the writing and the examples on it. So if you're absent, you could come here for the worked out examples. But real quick, I do have a few assignments about forms. There are forms for you, and there's one for your parent to fill out. If you just followed the QR code and filled it out, and just mark as done, guys. You don't have to fill it out from here. Just fill out the form once. However you get there, they all go to the same place. I made sure of that. So once you do these forms, once your parent does the form, just mark as done and turn in. WebAssign class join, that's just follow the directions and get into WebAssign. Remember, if you didn't get the special white paper from me with the access code, email me, come to Math Lab, which is every day from 2 to 3:30 during the week. But then there's a homework that popped up. I have to go really far in mine to go find it. Here's homework number 1. Let's just quickly talk about these directions and let me zoom in. Okay, so homework number 1 says, you guys probably can't see that whole thing. Let me zoom out one. That you are to go to WebAssign and work through and then submit the corresponding homework assignment. So there is a homework number 1 in WebAssign that should have popped up for you guys. I'm going to go ahead and go to student view really fast. Let me move my webcam. So this morning, and I had it scheduled to pop up at a certain time. You might need to reload if you guys did this earlier, in the sense of if you signed in earlier. There are a couple assignments for you guys to see in WebAssign. One of them is too much going on my screen is going to be mad at me. There we go. Okay. One of them just says getting started with WebAssign, and that's just literally like it teaching you how to put in answers. That's all that is. But the next one that came up, I obviously did not reload mine. That's a bummer. The next one that's going to come up is homework number 1. Now, when homework number 1 comes up, let's see if it'll let me actually do it. There we go. Homework number 1. When you guys click on that one, it is going to go ahead and, now this is my view, so you guys can see a lot more than your view would. You basically have problems that to you is just going to be numbered numbers 1 through, I don't remember exactly how many they are, but it's number 1, number 2, number 3. Yours is just numbered in like, hey, you have this many problems, so go ahead and do it. But I've told you in Google Classroom that it actually corresponds to your textbook, these numbers. The weird thing I want you to know is I'm saying it will be similar to those problems because WebAssign changes the numbers just a little bit. I can't make it not do that. So that's kind of a bummer, but the nice thing is when you go in and when you do this homework, let me get back into it. Even though it's not exactly the same as far as like in this one right here, the book might say something about 3 left and 4 above. It's going to be the exact same question, just the numbers are a little bit different. So even though that's a little bit annoying because our book does have something cool called Calc Chat that shows you solutions for all the odds. It's another website we'll look at on Thursday. The cool thing about WebAssign is you can actually watch little video tutorials. You can try it and then submit it and see if you're right or wrong and then try again. It gives you immediate feedback that you alone with your textbook late at night or early in the morning trying to do homework would not have had otherwise. It's a really snazzy resource in lots of ways. You can even like work really hard, finally get a question right, and then practice other ones, which is great for like a test review. So there's cool stuff with it, but you do need to do that introductory WebAssign assignment to kind of learn how to put things in a mathematical way. And also it should teach you about some of these cool tutorials and stuff also that are supposed to help you. And for those of you that couldn't pick up your textbook, you have an ebook you can always access. As far as if you want to look up something, or some of you just aren't in the States, you can't have your textbook, you have an ebook through WebAssign. That's another really important reason that we're using it. Let me pause for just 1 second. Do any of you guys have questions on WebAssign, getting into WebAssign, or the Google Classroom direction, which says it's going to be like these problems. Don't do these exact ones. Do WebAssign, submit WebAssign, but you can use the book as kind of like a guide as far as like maybe looking in the back of the book for answers or looking on Calc Chat. But then also I'm having you attach a PDF scan, and here's a way to do it with an iPhone. There are apps to do it with Android devices. Any quick questions about accessing any of this to play with it later on your own?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we so we're supposed to do both of them? The one on
No.
WebAssign and
Just do the WebAssign one, Kenya, but just show your work so you can attach like the work to go along with it, to go along with the answers. I'm just showing you like the problems that I used from the book, because I can tell WebAssign I want these problems. So that way, if it would help to look at the book and like look at the answers in the book to kind of know how to do it, I just want you to be able to have that as a resource, but you don't have to do it twice. Just do WebAssign.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if you talk to any kids that took Precalc before, they're like, Calc Chat, and you're like, okay, kind of, but the problem's a little bit different. But they're similar enough that maybe Calc Chat could help you as far as show you how to do the one where it was like 3 and 4, and you do the one on WebAssign that has like the numbers 5 and 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But you'll play with this first assignment. It's a short first assignment, and so hopefully that'll help you guys out just a little bit. Any other quick questions about how to access what I've showed you? Okay, Math Lab today, 2 o'clock to 3:30. If you guys are playing around with your homework at all, or with WebAssign or Google Classroom, come in. If you have any questions, you can share your screen, you can show me what's going on. But for right now, we are officially starting notes. And officially starting notes, what I want you to do in the front of your composition book, if you have it, is to make a table of contents page. Now, this is important. You're going to have a lot of sections this year, so don't start notes for a couple pages. When I go show you the 3 pages of notes, start your table of contents. When you start your table of contents, you're going to go ahead and put 1.1 rectangular coordinates. That's the title. That's for you to know what's showing up first in your composition book. You're going to put page 1. But when you start your composition book, you're going to actually start numbering the pages a couple pages through. As you guys just kind of start writing this down, let me go ahead and I think I can even, no, let me keep it on this page. Let me get a sample composition book to show you guys what I mean. So, in your composition book, you guys can go ahead and make the first page table of contents. Sorry, there you go. And then I haven't put the section because all my classes have a different first section. But you're going to put page 1, but you need to save some of these pages for your table of contents. So flip 2, if not 3 pages. Keep a few blank right here in the front for your table of contents. And then start numbering. Whoop, I flipped too many. There you go. Start numbering page 1. And then the next one's going to be page 2, and then page 3, and then page 4. And that way we can keep track of exactly what we're covering and where we're covering it. Does that make sense, everybody? Table of contents. And then start numbering your pages. Now you guys have your PDF in front of you if you opened it. If you didn't, that's totally fine as well. I'm going to move my picture over here to the side because you don't need me to be in the middle of all of your notes. And you don't need to write down everything on this slide. This is kind of just like a, hey, draw an X, Y, and be like, oh, quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4, horizontal, vertical, got it, origin. So if we were to have more time, we might have taken a little bit longer on this lesson. We might have even thought about how we could name these points A and B and C and D. We might have struggled just a little bit to remember that the first coordinate is, oh, that's not going to work. The first coordinate is the left, right. The second coordinate is the up, down, -1, +2. But most of us, 3, +4. If there's ever anything not on a graph, we can always kind of estimate, right? A few of us get a little confused when we start seeing zeros and which way, well, the origin's easy. We don't mind him. But that right, left, up, down, I know it's silly, I know it's basic, but I can do calculus great. Sometimes graphing points gets hard. I don't know, my brain gets a little overwhelmed sometimes. -2, -3, when you have 2 negatives, that always plops you in the third quadrant. So yeah, guys, our section basically starts with points, but it doesn't cover points in the traditional sense. It'll say things like, which quadrant will X be negative and Y be positive? But it might say it in snazzy ways, like, would X be less than 0 and Y be greater than 0? Just making sure your brain is making the connection of what negative means, of what positive means. So it's going to test you a little bit, even something as basic as graphing points. So that's why I put this slide in here, just to be able to give us a little bit of review. This will be in the video if I go a little too fast. But these things I know are really, really just review topics for you all. Pythagorean theorem is another review topic. Now that one, so basic, right? I can go ahead and just make my legs A or B or A. The sides don't really matter as far as me just labeling them. But the hypotenuse is always, 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 come on, you thought it, right? C. So then when we go ahead and, let me do this real fast so I can switch back and forth. Make our formula. You guys know Pythagorean theorem is always a squared plus b squared is c squared. That's not meant to be super crazy. But did you realize that the distance formula is really just the Pythagorean theorem? Because the distance formula, if I were to ask you guys, if I had asked you the first question today, what's the distance formula? Some of you would have been like, square root minus plus squared. Some of you have it memorized. Most of you, it would have been a struggle. And the reason it's a struggle is it's been taught to you guys in such a confusing way. Like, okay, we have to name this guy like x1 and name this guy x2 with the corresponding y coordinates. And a lot of people would just be like, well, there's a snazzy formula that you just need to memorize. And if you memorize it, you know distance. Because then you take this whole like subtraction thing of, let's go back to here. This is like the official one. That's supposed to be a 1. That's messy. But x2 minus x1, the difference of the x's squared plus the difference of the y's squared. You learned it way back in Algebra 1. But did you realize it really was just Pythagorean? Because x2 minus x1 is really just a leg of a triangle. And y2 minus y1, here's where it gets a little bit confusing, because if you guys are totally understanding what I'm saying, y2 minus y1 would be a negative number, but as soon as we put that in a squared, negative positive doesn't matter. What this really is, guys, is, let's see if I can show you, a squared, x2 minus x1 squared, plus b squared, y2 minus y1 squared, equals c squared. Except on this one, the c is really just d for distance between 2 points. And we don't write it as d squared, we just take the square root of both sides in order to get d by itself. So long story short, distance formula is really just Pythagorean theorem to 2 points that have been drawn to make it like a triangle. And so then how would you find the distance between 2 points? Well, it's up to you. You have 2 different ways now. Because one way is you could just go ahead and graph the points using that like quick review that we did of the 2 points and how to graph them. 3, 4. And then you could go ahead and draw and be like, okay, well, no big deal. Like, I'm just going to plug into this big old nasty formula. You could. You could plug in. What's your x1? What's your y1? What's your x2? What's your y2? Or you could be super snazzy and you could be like, or just think of it as a triangle and say, well, how long is that side? How long is that side? And I'm just going to use Pythagorean theorem to solve. Both ways work. One way is a bit more intuitive. The other way is a bit more, well, memorize it because someone told me to. Are both formulas good? Yeah. Both formulas are good. But maybe the idea of the triangle is a little bit better. And to end today, because I think we have 1 minute according to school time, which we all know is a little different than real time. The last thing, the last formula is the midpoint formula. Once again, these PDFs, remember, are going to be uploaded student folder on Google Classroom, and the video is going to be attached to the week 1 Wednesday announcement in Google Classroom if you need to go back and look at anything. But this last formula is the midpoint formula. And the midpoint formula, you could, once again, just memorize it. Or, I should say, remember it. But do you guys remember that once upon a time, if I were to ask you all the word average, even though you might not have remembered what the midpoint formula was, I can almost guarantee you, because it's happened for the last 12 years straight, if I say, well, how would you guys find an average? Someone would say, add it all up and divide by how many there are. And I'm like, that's perfect, so do it. Average the x's and average the y's. You have 2 of them, add them up, divide by 2. You have 2 of them, add them up, divide by 2. The midpoint is really just the average. What is pre-cal? A lot of it's going to be review, but it's going to be review of things that you already know, just taught maybe in a different way. Kiddos, the formulas from today were, how do you graph points? Pythagorean distance, midpoint. Not bad, not awful. Just maybe your questions might look a little bit different than you expect. With that, we are done today. I'm going to pause the recording.